Hi everyone, my name is Emma and I work for the Materials Management section of the Department of Environmental Conservation. So that's one of the three departments in the Agency of Natural Resources. And my team works to get the word out throughout Vermont about what people should do with their stuff when they're done with it, how to manage their materials properly, and also helps work to make it possible for everyone to manage their materials properly. And by properly, I mean, as well as possible, and also in alignment with Vermont's materials management laws. So I'm going to give you a very quick overview of Vermont's materials management laws and how we can all manage our materials in accordance with those laws. And then I'm going to briefly touch on how towns fit into this and how you can get help on anything materials management related. So with that, I'm going to share my screen, and you might be wondering, first of all, why Vermont even has materials management laws. And these laws are inspired by all sorts of different reasons, but some of them are inspired by what is actually ending up in our trash. And for example, the fact that almost half of our trash in Vermont could have been recycled or composted. And all of our trash, or not all, most of our trash here in Vermont goes to landfills, and a lot of our trash goes to Vermont's one active landfill in Coventry in the Northeast Kingdom. This is a picture of a new cell being built. And so when you think about landfills, there's not a lot of them, and it's really hard to cite new ones. So the fact that half of what's going in there doesn't actually need to be going in there is pretty motivating for the legislature. So that's inspiration. Some of these laws were also inspired by the desire to keep Vermonters safe. There are a lot of hazardous materials in our modern society, and so some of these laws are really focused on protecting public health and also protecting the workers who are managing these materials when folks get rid of them. And then last but not least, some of these laws are inspired by reasons that are really specific to one material. So I'll give you an example here. Food scraps are banned from the trash in Vermont. That's part of the universal recycling law. And there are a lot of good reasons for us to keep our food scraps out of the trash. For example, when supermarkets had to start keeping their food and food scraps out of the trash, they started separating their quality food from the food that was going bad and donating that quality food to the food bank. And those donations almost tripled in 3 years. So that is a huge benefit for Vermont and for our planet. Because when food scraps end up in the landfill, they produce methane, which is a really strong greenhouse gas. And so keeping those food scraps out of the landfill is a huge climate solution. And then all that good work is supporting our green economy here in Vermont. And when those food scraps are mixed with wood chips and leaves and other materials and composted, they can be used to create compost, which is this amazing material that can restore soils, help soils be more like a sponge that can hold on to water, grow healthier plants, and much more. So that's an example of some reasons that are really specific to one material. So most of these laws are structured as landfill bans, which means that these materials cannot go in the trash. And so we're now going to quickly go through what you can do with these materials, and we'll go section by section here. And this waste not guide is an example of a handout that we are happy to send to your municipal office or to your library for you to distribute in your community. So anything you see here today, we're happy to send over your way. And some of these materials, like the waste not guide, are easy to print from a color printer. Probably would look good enough in a black and white printer also. So let's start with food scraps. Many people manage their food scraps on site in a backyard compost bin or a solar digester, this picture on the right, which is dug into the ground. Some people hire a company to pick up their food scraps, just like they hire a company to pick up their trash or recycling. And those companies bring their food scraps often to a compost site or a farm that manages them. And they might hire a small scale pickup that picks up a bucket. Or they might hire a larger scale pickup where they're picking up carts full of food scraps or even dumpsters for a really big business. And then some folks bring their food scraps to a drop-off. There's drop-offs at transfer stations, fast trashes, compost sites, and some farms, and this varies across the state. And we have some great resources that can help your community understand how to manage their food scraps. And I would say, especially if you are in bear country, we've got great tips for backyard composting and also for managing food scrap carts and garbage carts with bears in mind, to take preventative action to prevent problems, and then what to do if you are having an issue. So we're happy to send you these resources, and they're all on our website as well. The Universal Recycling Law also banned leaves and debris, yard debris, sticks from the trash, and some folks can just, leave these materials on site in a back corner of their yard or in the woods if they have woods nearby, but also transfer stations and fast trashes have to offer collection seasonally. The Universal Recycling Law also banned Vermont's core often mixed recycling from the trash. So that's your food and drink containers, your plastic, tubs and jugs, glass, bottles and jars, metal cans, and then paper and cardboard of all sorts. So these materials need to be recycled in Vermont. And we love to help people answer their recycling questions because I know it's a little bit complicated. So we are happy to help folks figure out how to recycle better and make sure they're not accidentally putting things in the recycling that don't belong there and can cause problems down the way. And some of these sort of common mistakes are actually can be collected, but they have to be collected at drop-off specifically for that item. Like scrap metal, it's really great to keep scrap metal, like all sorts of random metal, out of the trash, but that material needs to be brought to a scrap metal collection, and a lot of transfer stations have those, and they're often free, or maybe there's some that are low cost, but they're often part of the greater transfer station budget. You can learn more about any of these programs by sticking around with me right now or going to our website. So the Universal Recycling Law also required municipalities and government, like state government, to put a recycling bin anywhere that there's a trash bin in public. So that's at schools, parks, municipal buildings. And if you do have bins that are at a park, for example, like this picture on the top right, it is totally fine to put a lid on your recycling bin that just has a circle hole open, like to cue people to put bottles in there, if you know that that's most of the recycling that's going to be there. For example, at a sports field, you might think, oh, it's going to be mostly water bottles and sports drinks, so that could make sense there. And that's just a strategy to try and cue people to not put trash in the recycling bin. But having different colors is also really helpful, and good labels can help us all understand what we're supposed to do. So that's Universal Recycling Law. Vermont also has a number of extended producer responsibility programs. That means that the brands that are putting these materials out into the world are paying for the collection and recycling of them. And that means that there's free collection for residents and for some of these for businesses in Vermont. And a lot of these collection locations are super convenient, like hardware stores collect many of these materials. And you can actually even get a $5 rebate if you turn in a mercury thermostat, which is sort of the older style dial thermostats. And a lot of these laws were passed because these materials have hazardous pieces or are extra challenging to manage. For example, mercury is hazardous, so we definitely don't want that going into the trash and getting broken on its journey. And for example, lithium-ion batteries, which are a common household battery, spark and start fires when they get crushed. So it's really important to get these materials to their collection locations. And then last but not least, there's a sort of array of other materials that should not go in the trash because they are banned and or dangerous. And I would say just for you and your residents, if folks have materials that say caution, hazard, poison, careful, those materials from households can be brought to household hazardous waste events or facilities. And there's a handful of facilities around the state, and there's events around the whole state, often in the spring and in the fall. And so we really encourage folks to manage these materials properly and to contact their local experts to figure out what their options are near them. Which brings us to how towns fit into all this. So every town has requirements, obligations under the state's materials management plan. And a lot of towns have teamed up with other towns in their region to fulfill these obligations together. And these sort of team ups, these solid waste management entities often have professional staff that do the work and can answer questions and provide services. So if you go to 802recycles.com, it'll bring you to this map, and you can either put in your town and it'll bring you to the website of your solid waste management entity, or you can just look at this map and see what you're part of. And I encourage you to introduce yourself and learn more about the services they offer and the information they provide. There are some towns that have decided to fulfill these obligations independently. And so if you're in one of these yellow independent towns, I encourage you to just reach out to my program, and we're happy to get you up to speed on what you need to know about materials management if that's going to be part of your role. And if your town has a transfer station and that's going to be part of your role, I again would encourage you to connect with your solid waste management entity, and then also to read through the permit and make sure you understand what needs to be done to manage the transfer station. And another pro tip is to put any important dates in the town calendar. And again, if you have more questions about that, I encourage you to get in touch either with your solid waste management entity or with my program at DEC, and we're happy to answer questions and get you up to speed. So if you want to learn more about any of these topics, you can go to vtrecycles.com. If you're a social media person, you can follow us on Facebook or Instagram, and feel free to be in touch with any questions. We are here to help, and this phone number and email address will get you over to my program. So thank you all for your work, and hope you have a nice rest of the day.